Have you ever asked yourself, what do bacteria want? Probably not. It's me, Moser, and after this video, you should be able to describe what bacteria need to survive and how changes in their environment can cause rather dramatic changes in their population size. It'd be really helpful if you already know at least a little bit about bacteria and the basic structure of their cells. Let's get started. There we are. Good old bacteria. Single-celled organisms, pretty basic. There are a few different shapes. We've got your rods, and you've got your spheres, and you've got these wiggly guys, spirochetes, but they're all single-celled. None of them have a nucleus. Their DNA is just loose in there in the form of a circular chromosome. And they've got some ribosomes. They have a cell membrane like everything, but they've also got a cell wall. And then, most of them at least, have a capsule around them that helps protect them. Okay, again, pretty basic. They're prokaryotes. Pro, like proto. Some of the first living things on Earth looked an awful lot like bacteria. What do bacteria want? Well, first off, they want to be survivors. Survivors? Yeah. How do the bacteria get by in this world? Well, first of all, it'd be really helpful if they didn't dry out. Bacteria are full of that watery stuff, cytoplasm, and staying alive means keeping the same balance of water on the inside and outside of that cell so that they don't dry up like bacteria jerky, ooh, or take in so much water that they pop like an overfilled water balloon. Not drying out would be helpful. They have to stay at a temperature that they can survive. You can't cook them, you can't freeze them. If they get too hot or too cold, well, they'll die. Bacteria are single-celled organisms. They don't have any way to control their temperature. So when the environment gets too hot, that's it. They're done. When the environment gets too cold, that's it. They're done. We call this need for stable conditions of temperature and moisture homeostasis, or a steady state. And all living things have this need for maintaining homeostasis. Poor little bacteria, they just don't have a whole lot of control. Now, not drying out, not cooking, not freezing, those will definitely keep an individual bacteria in the bacteria business. But if we're talking about the whole species, well, there's one other thing they gotta do. Make more bacteria. Aw, isn't Junior adorable? Look at his little flagella. Aww. Bacteria reproduce asexually, meaning one parent produces two offspring, through a process called binary fission, where one bacteria splits, like magic, into two new bacteria. But we'll talk more about that in the next video. You may have heard rumors that there are a whole lot of bacteria everywhere. Well, there are. But what if I told you there were even more bacteria than this? Eek! It's a lot of bacteria of all one species, living in one place, able to interact, able to, well, they don't reproduce sexually, but at least able to exchange genes. Yep. A group of one species living in a single place, well, you know what we call that? That's right. We call that a population. And when we're referring to a population, we generally have to refer to the place and the species. In this case, we'll call it Genericus bacterus, since we don't really have a name for my made-up bacterial species. But the place could be, well, a whole lot of places. Your gut, for instance. Your gut's got tons of different populations of bacteria, all living happily in there. One location, many species, many populations. A tub of yogurt. Yogurt? Yes, yogurt. Has got at least 5 bacterial populations in most yogurts. When it says live active cultures, you should look at what species there are. If we dug up a shovel full of soil, we would find probably hundreds of bacterial species. each with their own population, living very happily in the soil. A puddle could have a whole bunch of bacterial populations. Your dog's skin, a tree bark. See? They're really everywhere. And each one of those locations will host multiple species. And when we look at one of those species, we can talk about the population of that species of bacteria. Well, we said that individual bacteria have to stay the right temperature and stay the right level of moisture to survive. What happens if the conditions change? What happens if suddenly things aren't so good for our bacteria? What happens to their population? What if, for instance, we crank up the heat a little bit, turn on the fire? What happens to all these bacteria? Well, they don't have a way to control their temperature, and this beautiful little population here could very quickly experience a serious reduction in the size of their population. Ooh, well, that's not nice. But can't they fight back somehow? Can't they protect themselves? Can't they form a bucket brigade? No. They're bacteria. They don't have a whole lot of options. They're pretty simple. And basically, if they can't tolerate the heat, they die. If the cutting board that they're on gets laid out in the sun and dries out very nicely, they can't really control anything about their environment. They just die. If they're flooded with some sort of chemical that's toxic to them and it's going to burst all their cell walls, they can't run away. They can't put up an umbrella. They just die. When conditions in the environment change, bacteria kind of have to play the hand they were dealt. If they're sensitive to a chemical, they die. If the heat is too much for them and it's outside their tolerance range, if it's too hot, they just die. They don't have a whole lot of control. Poor little bacteria. Okay, do you think you can describe the basic things that bacteria need to survive? Do you think you can explain how changes in their environment could cause a massive change in the population's size for any population of bacteria? Good. That's a good start.